The Aurora Theater Trial began this week with harsh yet revealing testimony into the events leading up to the July 2012 incident. Arapahoe County DA George Brockler pointed to 2 separate psychiatric evaluations indicating the suspect was found to be sane at the time of the shootings. David, this was an intense week, and I think while the media in Denver is doing a responsible job at reporting and at least not making it a tabloid style, even just reporting it very actually of what's going on, the testimony it's heartbreaking. And we're just into the first week. What do you think of how it's gone so far and what we're liable to expect?
Well, it has been horrific, and as you say, we're just at the beginning of that process. But this was, of course, a mass crime that was intended to be horrific and to victimize as many people as possible. Indeed, as the district attorney pointed out in their opening statement, the number of people killed was actually far less than the plan for how many would be done. So, and as the opening statement also showed, and this was not a surprise, the prosecution's argument that the perpetrator was sane enough to be held criminally responsible partly depends on the long course of planning for this attack. And then even when you get past that, then the jury's decision about whether to impose a capital sentence depends in part on their finding of aggravating factors, of which we're going to have a long explanation. I think, as you say, this hasn't become one of these OJ disgusting type circuses. The media has done a good job, and for the people who tuned in on Monday to hear the opening statements of the defense and the prosecution, you saw on both sides very well-prepared lawyers who did a good, serious job of outlining the beginnings of their case to the jury. And so I think they're treating the case, of course, with the great seriousness that it does deserve. And that aspect, at least, is so different from the mockery of justice that the OJ cable television special became.
Eric, beyond just, I think, the community reliving the whole incident over through the testimony and through what we're hearing, the different pieces of evidence, it also seems there's going to be some pretty significant issues coming out of this, whether it's capital punishment, the whole definition of insanity, how we're treating mental health in Colorado. Those seem to be able to have some legs and we're probably overdue for those kinds of conversations. Can those conversations come from this event, or is that asking too much?
No, I think they can. You'll need thoughtful people to promote those conversations, but your question is a very good question. Dominic, I've been critical around this table. I've been on record as being critical of District Attorney Brockler for taking this to trial, given the plea deal that was on the table, and I'm not sure what you're getting out of this by pursuing it to maybe have a death sentence that will be carried out 2 decades from now. And that said, I have to give George Brockler credit for, I think, a very effective opening statement. I found myself strangely captivated. I was driving in a car somewhere Monday afternoon, had it on the radio, listened for a while, then got myself in front of a TV and tuned it in, at least in the background, for a couple hours. David is correct. The defense did also an articulate and very capable job. I think what makes, as I thought about it, what makes this case very interesting and somewhat unique is that you have a perpetrator who lived through it. Most perpetrators of these mass violence, horrific cases die in the process, either at their own hand or at law enforcement's hand. But here you have a live perpetrator. So you have a case study in terms of mental illness, and mental illness is different than insanity. And obviously that's part of what's being litigated here, is how different it is. But I'm fascinated, or at least interested, in the case study of James Holmes as somebody who went that far off the rails. And I think that's what we're going to see over the next couple of months, and maybe something will come out of it that prevents more James Holmeses in the future. That's really all you can hope at this point.
Susan, Denver has had to withstand more than its fair share of pretty major trials. This is no different. Actually, this is a lot different because this happened in our city right here. People have lived through it. How is this trial going to affect this community as we're moving forward?
I wish that it would open up a conversation about the death penalty, and I wish it would open up conversations about mental illness. But as both Eric and David said, that it's so horrific that you're really just not seeing the abolitionists, the anti-death penalty people coming forward and using James Holmes as an example of someone whose life should really be saved, other than kind of theoretically. And in that theory, in the thinkiness behind this, I'm not sure that this will galvanize the community, but what this all hinges on is a debate about what's sane and what's not sane. And George Brockler's argument is that James Holmes, because he's intelligent, because he's high functioning, because he bought pork chops and cereal in the days leading up to the shooting, because he wrote about the weather pleasantly with his mother, because he took exams, because he texted friends, because he had this sort of banality and kind of normalcy to some of his actions. Because of those things, he's not insane. And there's another argument, which is because he seems to have understood what's right and wrong, or that this was wrong, because he was obviously trying to cover up, that he's not mentally ill. And I think it would be really healthy for not just our community, but our country, to discuss the possibility that one part of your mind or your brain can know that something's wrong, and another can be mentally ill and lead you to believe what he believed, which is his life would have more value if he took other human lives.
Patty, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this trial. What did you make of the first week?
Well, I think the first week was handled pretty well, as these are going to go. The lawyers did a good job on both sides. Certainly the courtroom setup, they did a very good job. The security was good. The reporters were, in general, pretty restrained. You know, I'm sure everyone, Susan must see it too, in crazy press releases you get, everyone who wants to bring out their experts or they have their related stories. Those you could live without. But it's the first week of what's at least going to be 4 months long, and it's unbelievable how horrific the testimony is. It's not going to get any prettier as it goes on, and you wonder how much people are just going to tune it out because they don't want to think about it anymore. They don't want to hear any more horrible details because they know just how horrible it was. I don't think we're going to get the big discussion of the death penalty, or certainly not for many, many more months. It'll come up in the case of the trial, but we're not going to have a more general community discussion, which I think we need. I think we need a general community discussion of mental health, but we're not going to get it because it's going to be a fight in the courtroom. So I just wish we had gotten the plea deal in the first place. James Holmes would be safely locked up for the rest of his life right now, and everyone could go on with trying to heal after this horrible crime.